It's my pleasure to introduce our speakers today. Yezmin Assad is AWC's networking and telecommunications specialist. Yezmin's been working with AWC since 2021, developing an array of tech applications for the Internet of Things. These are devices that have internet-connected sensors, for example, to let us know that our fences are secure, lots of other applications with Internet of Things. Thanks for being here, Yezmin.
Thank you, Jay.
Also in Western Australia, Dr. Amanda Bourne. Amanda is regional ecologist for the Southwest and responsible for our science program across 4 sanctuaries in Western Australia, including the very exciting fly-in surveys on Foray Island in Shark Bay and one of our biggest mammal reintroduction projects so far at Mount Gibson in the Wheatbelt. Amanda, thank you for being there as well.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
And of course, last but not least, our esteemed CEO, Tim Allard, joining us from Sydney today. Thank you, Tim, our spiritual leader. Thanks for being on the call.
I've not been called that one before, Joey, so thank you very much.
Testing it out. So, Tim, to begin with, would you like to say a little about AWC's overall approach and the importance of work like this, embracing new innovations and technology to improve the effectiveness of the conservation work that we do?
Thanks, Joey. Yeah, look, I'm a self-confessed tech geek, and I'm always interested in how we can apply new and emerging technology to what we do. So we live in a world where biodiversity is in decline, to be frank. If you've been to an AWC function, if you've been to one of our sanctuary events, or you've read our literature that we put out, we unfortunately live in a world where biodiversity is in decline. And so we can't sit still in the work that we're doing at AWC. We need to be ambitious. We need to be hopeful that we can craft a journey into better outcomes for biodiversity in Australia. There's no other choice, to be frank. We're at the end of developing our 10-year strategy, which supports an ambitious growth phase. But to be ambitious and to scale up the work we do, we need to think about how we're conducting the work we do. How can we be more effective and efficient with the resources we have? You know, noting that of all charitable giving in Australia, only 2% of that goes to the environment. So we've got to be as effective and as efficient as we can be with the financial resources we get to deploy to achieving conservation outcomes. But beyond that, it is technology, and we'll hear from Amanda and Yezmin in a minute. It's the technology that will help us scale up. So it's not just about efficiency and effectiveness. It's also about supporting our ability to scale up the work we do. So I'm really excited about it. But this only happens because of the support you provide. Yezmin and Amanda really are what we call the tip of the spear. They're the people out there getting the work done and achieving these great outcomes and achieving, frankly, hope for biodiversity in Australia. But it's the support you provide, not just the financial support, which is obviously critical, but it is the moral support, the spiritual support, as Joey pointed out, that we know you've got our back to enable us to get out there and achieve the work we do.
Thank you, Tim. And yeah, thanks to everyone who has tuned in to join for this call. So we'll get into it. It's a cliche to say that we live in an age of technological disruption, but it's true. It seems like tech, and especially artificial intelligence, is transforming the world in front of our eyes. I heard someone say this, that horse has bolted about AI, and I think that's very true. Sometimes, occasionally, it improves things. It's making the world better in some ways. Over the years, AWC has been a leader in embracing different technologies to further our conservation work. We've fitted solar-powered action cameras to feral cats to watch them hunt in the Kimberley. You might remember some of that incredible vision. We've flown thermal imaging drones over the forest at night to find koalas in New South Wales. We've set up a network of audio recorders trained to listen out for rare birds like the Plains Wanderer in Western Queensland. We've used VHF receivers mounted to all sorts of aerial and ground-based vehicles, from helicopters to light planes, drones, even helium balloons, to track down various adventurous marsupials. And for nearly 2 decades now, we've used lots of motion sensor cameras or trail cams, often with peanut butter as bait, the universal attractant for marsupials, to vastly increase the amount of data we collect in our biodiversity surveys. And one of the big opportunities afforded to ecologists by artificial intelligence is the impressive capability of these algorithms to identify objects, including animals, in big data sets of photos. If you think about our network of sanctuaries across the country, we've got hundreds of camera traps deployed at any one time, and each of them is triggered by the slightest movement in the leaves of a bandicoot or a native mouse or a goanna, or quite often just a gust of wind. So you can think about the hundreds of thousands or millions of camera trap images that we generate each month. That is a lot of data, and with the right algorithm, it becomes a really valuable resource. So, Yezmin, jumping into it, can you please explain to us the work we've done to develop a species classifier model and how this helps us to make value out of that vast array of images that we collect?
Sure, Joy. So our species classifier model is actually an AI image recognition that currently can identify 113 species with accuracies averaging 95% and plus. And it's a model that is in constant training. So we are expecting that by the end of this year, we are going to achieve 120 species. And as you were saying, we have cameras all around Australia and millions of images. So we have been training this model through all this historical data. And now we have a model that can identify different species that are around all our sanctuaries. So just to explain a little bit how this model works, or the process actually, how we do this is that our field teams collect these camera traps. They download those images into their laptops, so they download it locally, then they move it to our servers, and through an internal website, they trigger an AI engine that takes all these images to the cloud, and in the cloud, they activate the mega detector, which is a filter that we do to divide these images between the ones that they have species and the ones that are empty or they don't have any species. So this will give us a batch of images to work with and to work on the classification only on those that actually have images, which is around around 40% of the whole batch. So it is actually very important to put all these images through the mega detector first before going into the proper classification of the images.
Great.
Yeah,
Really fascinating that only 40% of the images that we collect from our camera traps actually have an animal in them. Amanda, I might get you to just jump in briefly and talk about the difference this makes for your teams on the ground. Sorting through these vast collections of images, how does a tool like this mega detector work for you guys? How does that speed things up?
Oh, it's a game changer, Joey, really, because sometimes we're collecting just huge data sets. At Mount Gibson, for example, we have 120 cameras that are permanently deployed all year. That array alone collects tens of thousands of images. So for the ecologists to be able to filter out the detections of wildflowers waving in the wind, to be able to go straight to the images that we want of malleefowl and chuditch and that kind of thing, it's a real time saver.
Amazing. So I guess that's sort of step one in telling the story of how this tech has developed. Yes, can you go on and tell us about the species recognition and then how we've been able to apply that to make life easier for our field teams?
Yes, sure. So after we get all these images through the mega detector, we get all the images through the AI classifier, and all those images are getting tagged. So once we have this batch of images that they have the recognition done, we put them through an AI software that's called time-lapse for a smooth view of all these images and make it a little bit faster and easier for the team in the field to actually go through them and double check that their recognition has been done. And at the end of this process, have 100% of accuracy on the image that have been classified. And then, of course, that helps to make reports and to keep on training the AI model and to do their work easier.
I think I've seen this time-lapse software in use. So instead of having to click through one by one all of these images, It's saying these ones are bilbies, flash, 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 flash. These ones are flash, flash, flash.
Yeah.
We think there's nothing in this one. So basically, our team is able to verify those identifications that the model has made. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah, they are able to verify that the classification is actually correct, and instead of going one by one, it's more like a stream of images.
Great. Yeah. You can see the efficiencies already just in that application of this kind of image recognition work. So the next step was thinking about clever ways we could deploy this incredible tool that we now have to use motion sensor cameras to detect particular species and even particular individuals of species in some cases. So Yez, can you tell us about the SmartGate? What is the SmartGate? What's the concept behind it?
Okay, so yeah, the SmartGate started just as an idea of, okay, we have a great training, like a great training model. We have the capacity to apply some automation as well. So why don't we combine it together and try to create a new idea to let animals go through fences? So we created this tunnel that is it's gated. It has gates at the end of on each end of the tunnel. So we applied some cameras, we applied motion detectors, we have different mechanical and electronic components that can manage those gates. And yeah, of course, it has an AI processor. The special feature that this SmartGate has is that we do all the processing of the images on the spot. So it's what we call AI on the edge. So even though this SmartGate is connected, so we can remotely manage if necessary, all the processing of the images and the decision is made on the moment. So we have established for our trials that our confidence level was going to be determined by 96% of confidence from the AI. So when it says it's classifying the species through 3 images consecutive with 96% confidence, that's going to be good to go, a green light for the animal to go through. So yeah, we have trialed this SmartGate at Crackamaya. We did an internal fence. And yeah, it actually has been very successful. So we are very, very proud of it.
Okay, so it's almost like you've got those doors in hotel lobbies that open automatically, but combined with the image recognition means you can have a bouncer standing at the front deciding who gets in and who is not allowed in. I don't know if it's a good analogy, something like that. I've got a video of one of our reintroduced species at Karrakamaya using the SmartGate, and this has been, as you said, a trial within our safe haven at Karrakamaya. So at the moment in the trial phase, we're using internal fences just to work out, how this tech can be applied to a fence. I'll share the video, and while I'm doing that, Yez, could you please talk through the process? It's about a 90-second video for guidance. So talk through the steps involved when an animal like a woylie, one of our little betons, comes across the SmartGate.
Yeah, sure. So, okay, so in this case, the woylie would be attracted to just get in the tunnel by some bait that it's in the little canister there down on the right. Yeah, we used apples and peanut butter to sort of for them to feel the scent. And then once it gets in there, there's motion detecting, and that opens the camera, and the classification starts when it detects that during 3 images with 96% confidence, it is actually a woylie. It will close those inner gates where the woylie went through, and now it's waiting for the woylie to leave. It has opened the outer gates and invite him to leave the tunnel. Yeah, well, the important part here is that the woylie is it's detected when it's fully inside the tunnel. So we do the classification with the whole image of the animal. So then it leaves and the AI runs again. And once it's sure that there's no animal inside, that there's no motion detected inside the tunnel, it will proceed to close those outer gates. So the gates are towards the outside of the fence. And it will go back to the standby position where the outer gates are closed and the inner gates are open. And it's important to highlight that we have lots of different safety mechanisms to avoid animals to push the gates in, and the gates cannot go both ways, so it's only one way panel.
So with the sort of internal door opening first, then closing, then the external door, then closing, it's like an airlock in the space station or something. There would never be a time where both gates are open if we set it this way.
Exactly. There's mechanisms and electronics that let us know when the gates are fully closed before proceeding with the next step.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. What a cool thing to invent. Amanda, just thinking about the applications for this. So, yes, there are situations where we might want animals to be able to move, but we don't want them moving freely, and we don't want them moving, without our knowledge of what species are coming and going, because they're very important. So thinking about a place like Mount Gibson, how do our safe haven fences currently work? And are there limitations to that this might help overcome?
Yeah, well, these sort of fenced areas are extremely effective conservation tools, and AWC's implemented them and others in lots of locations around Australia, where you can remove predators, feral predators, which are a primary threat to conservation in Australia, from a defined area and keep them out, and reintroduce locally extinct species or have benefits for extant species. And we've observed over and over again really rapid recovery in these systems. It's definitely a core part of our work and something we look to do more of, but there are limitations with fenced areas as well. They can suffer from what we call island problems. The populations inside them can be limited in size. They're always isolated from other populations of the same species, can be vulnerable to environmental shocks. But the main concern for us, or the main limitation for us, I guess, is that they will only ever cover a tiny proportion of the Australian land area. So, we're always looking for ways in which to kind of expand the benefit into larger landscapes.
Yeah, and I think, when you visit one of these safe havens, it feels vast, and it is vast. I mean, they're big scale in the scheme of things, but when you look at the continental scale, all of Australia, they're pinpricks on the map. So very important from a population management level, but when we're looking at full landscapes and deploying conservation of this style in a broader way, we're thinking outside the box and outside the fenced areas as well. And so how might a device like this SmartGate give us different options to manage some of these vulnerable populations within a wider landscape?
There are so many potential applications for a technology like Yezmin's just described, to increase connectedness with the surrounding landscape. We can think about ways in which a gate like this might help species that have left a fenced area on their own to come back in. At Mount Gibson for years, we've been recording woylies releasing themselves over the fence into the surrounding landscape, and we pick them up on the cameras out there, all the time. So it'd be nice for them to be able to get back in if they want to. They can climb out, but due to the fence design, they can't get back in. To allow us to do managed releases of target species, from within the fenced area into the surrounding landscape, or to have things pass through in either direction. Sort of hypothetically, if we were to build another fenced area in the Southern Jarrah Forest somewhere, we might encounter, extant populations of threatened species of interest like quokkas or chuditch and that kind of thing. And we wouldn't want to disrupt the connectedness of that population. So we might protect a portion of it within a fence, but enable the species to move between populations that are established outside and inside a new fenced area, for example. They could also be configured to act as a trap, so both doors could be closed at the same time, which might be very useful for targeted monitoring of particular species, reducing bycatch of other things, or for management purposes like cat control. We could even think about other kinds of devices altogether. Could the technology be used, not just for a tunnel type thing, but for something else, a sliding door or a bait dispenser, or all sorts of other potential applications of this. Yeah.
We've had some questions that people sent in beforehand over email, and this might be a good point just to remind you that if you do have questions about this project you'd like to ask, click on Q&A at the bottom of your screen and type it in. We'll get to some of those in a minute. One of the ones that came in, which maybe we could address now, is the limitations of a device like this. So the hypothetical is, what happens if you've got a SmartGate that is allowing some animals out of a safe haven into the outside area? And what if a cat becomes habituated or learns that where these smart gates are, occasionally you might get a meal? I'm assuming we'd have ways to mitigate the risk of predators becoming trained to that sort of thing. Amanda, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so the very first step for us as an organization everywhere is effective threat management. So before we are looking at releasing anything outside of a fenced area into a wider landscape, we are engaging in years of cat and fox control in that landscape and monitoring the impact that our control has had. So, we wouldn't be releasing species until we were fairly confident that we had a manageable number of cats out there. But yes, it's entirely possible that cats could be attracted or could learn to monitor these sorts of gates for a quick snack. But there are definitely things that we could do. So we would be, definitely checking if that was happening. We could absolutely, if we felt that cats were being attracted to the area, use that to our advantage for management by setting traps and cat targeted baits and that kind of thing around the area. And it would be possible, Yezmin, to configure the whole device to detect a cat in the area and not open the outside gate in the case that there was a cat nearby.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much we can do with sensors now, and the fact that the processing is done on the device, as you explained, Yes, means that it's not relying on someone checking first. That all of that thinking can be loaded onto this SmartGate device, which gives us those options.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes.
No, yeah, and we can add cameras and motion detectors and train the model to make decisions based on what we consider is the best.
It's a brave new world. Amanda, just thinking about the broader implications of this, we've done work over the past few years to establish populations of some species outside of fenced areas. So, at Mount Gibson, people will have heard about brush-tailed possums and chuditch being reintroduced there. What are some of the bigger picture implications of the applications of this tool?
Well, I think all of the innovation and technology work that we do at AWC is really fundamentally aimed at helping us achieve the maximum conservation benefit that we can, as efficiently and as effectively as we can, and over as large an area and for as many species as possible. So these sorts of technologies, they really allow us to look at ways in which we can improve connectedness with the surrounding landscape and increasingly automate the process of repopulating larger areas with currently missing native species. The Mount Gibson's a great example of where we've been doing that. It's a fenced area in the middle of a much larger property surrounded by a number of other conservation properties, an area totaling hundreds of thousands of hectares under conservation management. We've been doing a lot of cat control there. We've trialed outside the fence releases of different species, as you've mentioned, starting with possums, then moving on to chuditch when possums was successful. And now that chuditch have gone well, we'll be releasing woylies intentionally outside the fence in a couple of weeks, which is an exciting next step. So one model that integrates technologies like this, we could be looking at increasingly semi-permeable fences surrounded by these managed landscapes where we have selective releases of target species, into much bigger areas.
A question that I've got, maybe for Yezmin, is about the timing. So we've been running trials of the SmartGate so far at Karakamaya near Perth. Do we have any idea how soon we might be able to deploy or implement a SmartGate for real life on an external safe haven fence at one of our sites?
Well, we are at the stage where we just proven the concept. So we have some mechanicals to improve. So we are building a second model. So the next step would be to test that second model with the new improvements. And yeah, once we have that ready and we are confident with that one, I guess we will come up with a plan with Amanda and see, yeah, how we can deploy it and where.
So still in prototyping, but making very rapid progress. And, with the work that we've seen with the species recognizer model, that's only been a few years, and now that's used very widely across our network of sanctuaries by all sorts of field teams. Great, a question has come in. Thank you. So here's the question. if we are happily letting animals out of a leaky fence, do we equally provide the opportunity for them to return to the safe haven? Amanda?
So at the moment, the fence design doesn't allow for that. So currently we can put animals outside or they can put themselves there by climbing over. But the floppy top and the skirt, which keeps the cats and foxes out, also keeps everything else from entering back in. So yeah, one potential application of a technology like this would allow us to selectively let things come back in. So if you do have, for example, a woylie that's decided it would go adventuring, but then felt like it would rather actually go back home once it's been outside, and it's patrolling along the fence line trying to get back in, which we do see occasionally, it may be able to duck into a gate like this and be released back into the exposure to its home range, which would be, you know, a great animal welfare and conservation benefit there. So it'd be very nice to be able to have an option to get these species back in without having to go and try to trap them ourselves. Something that automates the process like that.
One more question, and we'll have to leave it there because we're nearly out of time. Just about the idea of the gate being used as a trap. So how could that work? What would that look like?
Well, it's possible to work on the mechanisms to identify if it is an animal that we want to trap, if it is a species, not necessarily has to be a feral species. We can use it for other trapping surveys that we do. But it's definitely possible, yeah, because the mechanism we have built it and we have customized every feature that the SmartGate has. So if eventually we need to use it for trapping, that's definitely possible.
We're able to reprogram it in any way that's useful for us with a combination of opening and shutting doors at different times. I'll just quickly answer this one about whether we have applied to patent this technology, and I can say yes, we're in the process of doing that. So that's something, you know, we're really proud of this work. It is a valuable innovation that we think can be applied broadly, not just by AWC, but by other conservation groups too. I'm afraid we're almost out of time, and Tim, I've got a question for you that I think might be on a lot of people's minds, and that is, how can people help support this work?
Thank you, Joey. None of this work happens without the support you all provide. You know, the work that people like Amanda and Yezmin are doing, and myself and Joey, it only happens because of the support you're providing. We are in June at the end of the financial year, and it's when your gifts really count. And it allows us to really harness the brain power of Amanda and Yezmin, because it's really that technology, the application of that technology is limited by our imagination and the resources we can put towards it. So for those who've already made a gift, thank you very much. It simply allows us to get stuff done. You know, one of my core personal values is get stuff done. We don't wring our hands and think about it and worry about it. We get out there and we deliver impactful, measurable results. And that only happens because of your support. So thank you very much.